pe mut, nu?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Adriana Bridaru. I'm the curator of the curatorial project Living Content Under Pressure, together with Tatiana Moise. And just to give you a short introduction, for those who don't know, Living Content Under Pressure is an interdisciplinary curatorial project that conceives itself as a collection of poetic exploration, looking into potential reconciliation with what it means to be human in the age of climate crisis. Living Content Under Pressure is composed of an exhibition hosted by Mobius Gallery in Bucharest, an online platform created by Wednesday Studio, and public programming that cross-pollinates the project's online and offline environments throughout September and October. And today we start off our public programming with a presentation called Mingled Bodies by Nona Inescu. I'll introduce Nona and then she will take over. So just to give an idea, the talk will be approximately 40 minutes and hopefully we'll have some time for a couple of questions at the end as well. I'll just jump straight into Nona's bio. So Nona Inescu works with photography, objects, installations, and video to define contemporary relationships between the human body and its environment through the lens of posthumanism. Concepts such as geological time and our relationship with the environment compose in her practice an aesthetic language of contemporary coexistence in a biological technosphere. Nona studied at Chelsea College of Arts and Design in London, the Royal Academy of Fine Art in Antwerp, and at the National University of Arts in Bucharest, and exhibited internationally at Tallinn Art Hall, Peles Empire, SpazioA, Pistoia, Künstlerhaus Bremen, Savvy Contemporary, FRAC, de Pays de la Loire, Art Encounters Biennale, Kunstverein Nuremberg, amongst many others. Nona currently lives and works between Bucharest and Berlin. And welcome, Nona. I'll gladly just pass you the torch now for your presentation.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Adriana, for the introduction and also for inviting me to take part in this project and for the opportunity to share more insights into my work. I would like to start by framing a bit the presentation with a quote or with some writings from a French philosopher, Michel Serres. As the title of the presentation is called Mingled Bodies, and it's a title borrowed from his work. He describes the senses as nothing but a mixing of the body. The principle means whereby the body mingles with the world and with itself. Serres claims that the world and the body touch through the skin, which defines their common border. He writes, contingency means mutual touching. I mingle with the world, which mingles itself in me. The skin intervenes in the things of the world and brings about their mingling. The things of the world that I draw upon in my work are primarily of the hard, indurate variety, such as stones, corals, and shells. In my photographic works, pieces and fragments of the human body or a whole figure often convene with these myriad mineral formations, brittle and mute, introverted, shy-seeking connection. A torso, shoulder, and arm discreetly protrude from a slit in a large boulder. Two hands cup a curiously shaped rock, conjoined like Siamese twins. I will now start, because this quote kind of relates to the to my series of work called Concretions, Geophilia, which I did in 2017 as a photographic series that expanded in an exhibition called Lithosomes, which was shown at a gallery in Berlin the same year. And I think it's, I will, share screen. I think it's a very good example for my practice, because it's also the first time that I'm working with this kind of very direct juxtapositions and overlappings of human bodies and natural phenomena. These stones were found in, they're still in southwest Romania in a village, and they're quite particular because they're called concretions, and they develop over decades and centuries and millions of years, growing and becoming this kind of round, bulby shape, taking this kind of shape. I did a series of photographs back then by traveling with my partner, and I tried to kind of blend in with the landscape. I was interested in these particular stones because they are, they grow around an organic nucleus. So they develop over the thousands of years, and they just, almost like a human body or any type of other body, they just develop and have this kind of existence in a deep time, in separate from humanity in a way. So I was interested in this kind of hybrid connection, and use them. I mean, the photographs were meant to underline this hybridity of an inorganic matter behaving as a body. As I said, the exhibition where I first showed these bodies of work also was conceived a bit as a playground for these rocks. I thought about the characteristics of these particular stones, and one of them is, of course, is the shape. That's the most obvious one, but then it's their weight. And so I conceived this kind of swings made out of leather to hold their weight. And initially they were meant also as an interactive piece. People could just touch them and push them around. But of course, it was kind of a bit dangerous in the end to activate them like that. So thinking about how a body develops over time and how it can change and how it can develop things such as muscles and weight. This installation also recalled a bit the idea of like a Pilates structure or a gym. This is the work called Lithosomes. It's the one that I was referencing in the text. It shows these kind of small compression stones that's like a conjoined Siamese twin. This is also the first work from a series called Introverts that I developed using the same kind of stones and integrate them in these sort of cages, metal cages and leashes. Again, to kind of stress out the idea that it is a living organism, even though it's not in theory. So I think this kind of work also brings about questions relating to the hierarchy of natural elements and what is considered to be an animal or a stone, and how there are these particular things that are in between. I try to show in a way this particular process of formation for concretion stones. And of course, it's not a visible process. It cannot be witnessed with the naked eye. So I decided that the best way to do it is to imagine this 3D animation, which I'm going to play. I collaborated with an artist called Tesselat, and she helped me kind of suggest this whole thing about stones growing around an organic element such as a tooth or a piece of leaf, and to visualize this process that's otherwise impossible to witness.
Primordial organic things loved their rocky forebears, clung to stone solidity, became part of stone themselves. It is harder than you suppose to tell the difference between protozoa and superorganisms, between the 5 arms of the starfish and the splayed human form. Organic life adheres, multiplies, fades. Yes, humans have always desired the endurance of stone. They scratch a small hole and bury their dead. They place rocks upon their bodies as if to keep the spinning world still. Yet life can hold perdurability only if the bacterial and the human are one. Then you are nearer to stone's speed. Then stone can see you. From this vantage, this view so anthropody-centered that language fails its imagining. From this lapidary perspective, stone possesses its own life, its own mortality. If stone had a voice, it would be less ponderous than your own. If your hurried heartbeat did not bind you to your swift smallness, you would know the affinity that binds you with the stone.
So yeah, coming back to this particular elements, I think there are like these hard, compact masses of matter in many ways are a stony equivalent to said mixings of senses, which is expressed in the word concretion in itself. It's derived from the Latin con, which means together, and crescere, which means to grow. The unusual shape of these stones have provided a fertile breeding ground for myth over the millennia. And in the villages where they're found in Romania, people think they are dinosaur eggs or alien stones. I continued my investigation into these particular stones in some other works from 2018, when I was invited to an artist in residency in FRAC de Pays de la Loire in France. The location of this residency was nearby Carnac, which is a very famous site, archaeological site in Brittany, pretty much like the Stonehenge of France. And then I did some new works that combined this kind of stones with the local landscape there. For this work, I used as a reference, and also for the text that's part of the work, I used the book called In a Land, written by Jacquetta Hawkes, who's a British archaeologist, and she published this book in 1951. Much like the stones in itself, her writing was also could not be defined in a genre. So she was she was not seen as an archaeologist per se, because she had a very poetical approach to how she related to the landscape, but also in the literary circles, she was not perceived as a poet or writer. So I kind of liked this again overlapping, and of course the idea that there was a woman who had powerful voice in this kind of fields and was never she was a bit under the radar. This was a sculpture that was part of this residency, and it's called my project there was called Vestigial Structures, and this is the appendix, which it's like a formation, like a series of this kind of compression stones integrated in a latex tube, much like an intestine, and it was presented in relation to this video work. Like this. And it was important for me to have a projection of this video work that I'm going to show in a minute, to have it as a monolith in itself, to kind of double the effect that you encounter in this site at Carnac, where you have to go around, or much like building an object in itself rather than just having a flat screen surface. So as I said, I took Jacques Darroc's unclassifiable book as a starting point for this video. The vestigial structures, the title derives from the name, from meaning the organs that have outlasted their use, and structures with no apparent function beyond linking us to the residue of past ancestors. Accompanied by a soundtrack composed by Simina Oprescu, which scrambles human speech. The camera pans across fields of Carnac stones in Brittany, which is the largest collection of megalithic standing stones in the world. Accumulations of millions of years of sedimentary minerals, such as stones, from a portrait of passing time and natural changes. Interspersed with the black and white footage shot at the Neolithic site in Brittany are scenes that imagine smaller concretions as extensions of the body, like the round nipple-like form held to a woman's bare breast that slowly rises and falls as she inhales and exhales, or the bulbous stones that pulse, flex, and push against the skin as their human hosts perform basic muscle toning exercises. Here I would like to say also that even though it is a recognizable woman's body, for me it was important to have a queer body in this work, which in the meantime became a trans body. So I was, I chose this particular person because of this kind of juxtaposition of natural phenomena and human bodies, which cannot be classified so easily. I will now go further to another instance of an overlapping from natural world and humans, namely corals, which of course are associated directly with climate change as being one of the most vulnerable animals, threatened with extinction, and also a bit like the canary in the mine. With every bleaching event, there is this kind of awareness and acceleration that things are the awareness that things are really accelerated in this kind of disaster, man-made disaster. So in 2018, I was looking a bit into that and how historically corals have been misunderstood. They were perceived as first as a plant, then as a mineral formation, because when they're dead, their skeleton becomes hard and brittle, and eventually they realized it's a living animal. I was also looking a bit into experimental and niche medical practices that incorporate trying to incorporate fragments of corals in human bodies, like for implants, because the molecular composition, molecular structure of a coral, it's identical to a human bone. It's basically calcium. So because of their porosity and their texture, it was a very good way to be for the human body to accept it, because of all the blood vessels that would have they would attach to it very easily. This is a work called Reef, and it's basically a mingling of different hands from various people. The diversity was important for me, and also the diversity, but like the kind of way that they blend in, because it's a photo of human, of course, women's hand, men's hand, people of color. So a bit like a reef. It's in real life, like a place for diversity, for the species of animals that visit it and feed on it and live in it. This exhibition took place at my gallery, SpazioA, in Italy. And as with all my exhibitions, it featured a variety of media. It became, after I did this project, it was very clear for me that it was a bit more morbid than intended, because of a lot of dead, like fragments from dead matter, such as leather that comes from dead animals, or the coral bones that come from coral, the dead corals, of course. These works are called brittle bones, and it's basically the association, a very clear association of bones, which can be animal or human. They're made of ceramics, but the starting shapes are from actual bones and real corals. I wanted to have this kind of like auto vehicle, motorcycle kind of elements integrated into this exhibition, because CO2 is one of the main factors for pollution, and it affects the corals directly. Also, the exhibition space was structured with this kind of curtains to kind of suggest a hospital salon, and to separate the different sculptures. But it also created slightly more intimacy in the space to see the works. As part of the same exhibition, I worked together with this 3D artist that I collaborated before. And together we imagined how these implants could work on a skeleton. So, where is it? Here. It's a very short video. The soundtrack is like underwater whale cry, and the title of this work is borrowed from Shakespeare, who was the first to kind of draw this parallel between bones and corals.
Nona,
Yes.
sorry, I'm just wondering, because you said the sound is important, but I can't hear the sound. I'm wondering if there's
the sound, was it working before?
It was working previously on the YouTube. I feel like the previous video on the website was not working properly, but I couldn't tell until very late. But this is
not at all.
I can hear it in the background, but maybe it's not as, I hope it's not just, all right, maybe it's just for me, I'm sorry. So yeah, my tech support is telling me that it's just for me, so I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry. also having some technical difficulties. Okay, corrected. Anyway, it was it's just a looped video, very short sequence of this little bit that grows into the skeleton hand, and then just they just intermingle. Yeah. So this was the exhibition, an animal that was once thought to be a plant that transformed into stone. Fast forward to 2021. My most recent exhibition it's called Water Lily Jaguar, and since I started by showing you my interest in the mineral world and how I incorporated that into my work. Then I continued with this kind of hybrid animal, misunderstood, and now I'm working more in the sphere of the vegetal world. Again, I was looking at how water plants, specifically water lilies or Victoria amazonica, but also like species like Nymphea alba and other kind of Nymphea plants that you can find them in Romania. How are they associated with a lot of allegories, both in the history of art and in popular culture, and also their influence in architecture, because it's a known fact that Victoria amazonica, so the largest of the water lily species, has these huge round leaves, and the structure that holds this leaf like floating in the water, the back structure of it, was used as an inspiration for the Crystal Palace in London by this architect, by Joseph Paxton, who also started or working with this by building greenhouses to host these plants. So starting from the structure of the plant, he first did some greenhouses, and then he figured out that he could use the same structure in metal and glass to build a huge glass palace, which was eventually demolished. But I was interested in this story, and then I was also interested in his use of materials. So I tried to kind of replicate the same, using a lot of metal and glass in the works. I went to last year after the lockdown and everything. The first place that I went to was the Danube Delta, and it was both as an escape as well as to try and take photos and footage of the underwater world that is composed by these plants, see what happens underneath them. And this is how this exhibition came about. And in relation to the work that I'm showing in the exhibition Under Pressure, this is the first liana work that I did. And the photo, it's in relation to a photograph, and the photograph was taken in Leta forest, which is a protected area and the only subtropical forest that exists, I think, both in Romania as well as in the larger geographical area. And it's quite a unique ecosystem. So for this exhibition, I collaborated again with Simina Oprescu, this time for a video, but also we produced a limited edition vinyl record with her composition for this work. So as I said, the water lilies were always associated with the anthropomorphized and humanized as women or mermaids, specifically, this kind of mythical creatures that lure men into the water and then drown them. I try to integrate this aspect of the stories, but both evil and attractive in a way. And yeah, it was quite a lot of fun to to produce these works. This photo was actually taken in a park in the center of Bucharest. And at 6 in the morning, with no kind of papers stating what I'm doing there. And it was a bit of a ride to actually achieve that.
Did they stop you, or was it, did someone notice that you were doing that? Or
yes, of course, but not the guardians of the park were eventually called by this woman, like an older woman, who was walking her dog, and her dog was, it's not exactly walking her dog because the dog didn't have its front legs. So she was carrying this dog in a bag, and she started yelling at us and threatening us with calling the police. And even though we tried to have a conversation saying we're not doing anything wrong, nobody's swimming in the lake, we're just taking some photos on the shore. Eventually she called the guardians, but they were nice enough to they just said, yeah, do your thing, do your project, it's no problem for us. But she was very intense and kind of rude. So that's the funny bit. But I didn't know how to proceed further. If I would try to get an approval to do that, it would have been probably very difficult. So I just went for it at 6 in the morning and hoped things will go well.
Yeah, well, it worked out really well. So
yeah.
And you have a great story as well from it.
Exactly, a great memory. Yeah, also the dog's name was Hercules. So yeah.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty cute.
So I don't know, I could show just a bit. This video is longer, so I'm probably going to show just a little excerpt. The soundtrack is composed by Simina. The voice is from Geo Agina, a very talented singer. And the footage is mostly from the Danube Delta and from Bucharest and from this other smaller delta south of Bucharest. Is the sound okay?
I received a sense of emotion. With me comes when I received the force of the eruption, shortly I paralyzed.
Okay.
It's really beautiful. I love the way you mix sound with images and moving images, especially in how sound in general, just you integrated so naturally in your work, and it's so beautiful.
Well, I'm lucky enough to have good collaborators who understand exactly what I want also, but it's always like it's a good dialogue, I guess. So we are
I should also
directing each other. So
yeah, it's always the case, I guess. And I should also mention that Simina Oprescu, who you often collaborate with, is also part of the exhibition, and she made a piece for the Living Content Under Pressure exhibition that you could find on the website as well. So things come naturally together. I think we're running a bit short on time because we've been for about 50 minutes online. So I think that, I mean, I have one question that I would maybe want to ask, and then maybe we can just wrap it up after that. And of course, if there are any other questions from the public, maybe they can be shared right now. But in any case, I'm just going to go ahead and ask because I'm really curious. So you often, in your work, you use a lot of, you're blurring all these borders between the animated and the inanimated, or the animal and non-animal, human, non-human, and so on. And it's, but you're also using anthropomorphization a lot. And I'm just curious because this practice of anthropomorphizing natural elements has been like, I wouldn't say controversial, but at least there are different camps when it comes to anthropomorphizing nature. And it can be useful, it can also be not useful. People see it in very different ways. And I'm just curious if you can expand a little bit more on this idea, how you use it in your practice and how you think it is helpful or interesting in relation to our attitudes towards climate change.
Well, I think I do this in a variety of ways. Sometimes I anthropomorphize natural elements by just placing them, like displaying them in a certain way. I think my whole idea is to kind of create a common thread between all these things and to create bridges or parallels. In this way, I think humans can relate easier to animals and plants and stones, which they're normally perceived as inferior. So it's just by stressing out the link between and the common ground between things. And sometimes it's this kind of unexpected association that, I'm also discovering while doing my practice. I'm aware of this kind of controversial thing about anthropomorphizing, but I see it as a useful way and a very clear, almost didactic way of creating some positive influence, because I noticed that people are really becoming much more aware when they see a stone in an exhibition. They kind of, people get back to me, like they start noticing these kind of stones, whatever they like, and they send me photos of that. So they just suddenly become aware of the surrounding environment much easier than before. So I guess it's just another way of putting a spotlight onto these other realms that are, connected to us and vulnerable. Mm-hmm. And it's not like an activist way of promoting this idea of conservation, preservation. of the natural world, but it's just creating awareness in a more subtle form, but still it's still awareness, I guess.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think just to stay within I would love to continue this conversation. I feel we could talk forever, but just to fit into the time, we should probably wrap it up. And I thank you so much, Nona, for this. It was so insightful, and it was so lovely to find out about your practice at a glance. It was great. I'm just gonna say a few words before we close it down. So I just wanted to say that we'll be continuing the public programming tomorrow at 4 p.m. Bucharest time, on the same platform, with a conversation with Monira Al-Kadiri. And we'll be talking about her research, upbringing and artistic direction, and more specifically about her work in the exhibition, Wonder. And so I want to thank you, Nona, again, for taking the time to do this and for giving us a little bit more context for the project and for the exhibition. And Tatiana Moise, of course, my co-curator, who is also online, and Ștefania Dobrescu, Roxana Gamarz of Mobius Gallery, and Ioan Maxim, as well as our partners, Iterea New York, Goethe Institute, and AFCN Romania. And with this, I wish you a very nice afternoon.